What happened back there?
I don't care.
Hey, I've got an idea. Let's rock talk.
Hi everyone, it's Lord Magicus, and we're going to have some more MTG Rock Talk. So, I'm going to try to keep this one shorter. I know that the last two times we did this, it kind of dragged out for a long time. So, let's just go over this quickly, and we will have some gameplay stuff today. I will be out later this afternoon, and I also have a special announcement, which will have its own video out later this afternoon as well. So, my secret project is finally finished, so we're going to see, we'll see all what that's all about. It's exciting. I'm pretty stoked about it. So, all right, let's get into this quickly. We're gonna start with standard and historic, and then we'll talk about companion because that's like the biggest thing. But let's deal with these formats first. So, this announcement was just for standard and historic or bannings. So they have banned Fires of Invention and Agent of Treachery. So let's see, they say over the course of the last several weeks, Fires of Invention decks have risen to have a dominant win rate and metagame presence in Standard, achieving the 55% win rate and having even or favorable matchups against each of the other top 10 archetypes. So once again, they're indicating that this 55% win rate against, like, I don't know, I guess like overall, that's what they're looking at. If any deck has like more than a 50%, like if they have like this 55% win rate against the metagame in general, like that seems to be when they like to take action against it, which is kind of surprising because it doesn't seem like it's all that high of a win rate. Like I'd have to imagine that probably most decks are between that like 50 to 55% range in general, and it'll change because of different metagames, but maybe there's also a length of time that's associated with this. So they say like several weeks, but it has to have been longer than that. I don't know. I think that this number is interesting that they keep giving this in each one of these announcements, but there's got to be a little bit more to it than this, because I don't think like this by itself is probably enough for them to want to do something. It has to be like a specific amount of time or against a certain number of decks, like. But so I don't know if anybody's doing the statistics on decks winning at like opens, or well, I guess not that anymore, but maybe like challenges and whatnot. This is probably the threshold that we should be looking at for analysis. So because it's come up a few times now since we've started looking at this. So so they found Fires of Invention to be a significant design and balance constraint. Actually, you know what? Let's read this whole thing, because actually this first part's kind of important. In addition, as we craft and test future environments, we found the card Fires of Invention to be a significant design and balance constraint. This is interesting, because this means that maybe there's some card that they're going to print that would be even more ridiculous with Fires of Invention. But if that's the case, you would also wonder, well, why is like Wilderness Reclamation not also under the same consideration? Because it effectively does almost the same thing that Fires of Invention does. It doubles the amount of mana you have as a 4-mana enchantment. I guess maybe they're... I don't have a good answer to that. Like maybe they're worried about casting like 2 sorceries in one turn. Like I'm curious what could possibly be coming up where they're looking at like the next couple sets with this card, that this is a problem, but like Wilderness Reclamation wouldn't be, because they really do seem like they're very similar cards. So, because of the flexible nature of the cost reduction effect, the Fires of Invention deck would continue to gain raw power as new high mana cost spells are added to the environment. But so that would be the case for Wilderness Reclamation too, would it not? As new sets have been released, we've seen the win rates of Fires of Invention decks increase compared to past standard metagames. Okay, so yeah, the win rate's obviously a problem. So because Fires of Invention has a current high win rate and metagame shared in the risks and the design constraints it poses to the environment going forward, it's banned in Standard. You know what? Fine. This card needed to be banned. Fires of Invention is an absolutely broken Magic card. It definitely is deserving of a ban in my opinion, but I still think that almost every argument you could make for banning Fires is also an argument you should be using for Wilderness Reclamation. I mean, one thing that Fires does is it lets you So it lets you cast 2 sorceries in your turn, whereas Wilderness Reclamation will let you cast either one really big instant speed effect, or you can cast a sorcery and then like an instant on your opponent's turn. So, yeah, and I guess the other thing is Fire's Invention also, it gives you access to cards that are outside the colors of the deck that it's in. So something like a Grixis deck can then cast, like emergency powers with Narset in play. So obviously that's probably not something that we want to have happen, right? Because we don't want like decks like having access to 5 colors of stuff. But at the same, I don't know, like at the same time, like most of the cards that you want to cast, like you can just build to be in those colors anyway. Because the mana fixing right now is actually pretty good. Shock lands do really help that a lot. And I have to imagine that it's going to continue to be fine in Zendikar, because Zendikar is usually a pretty land-heavy set. Or, yeah, the land is a pretty good theme in it, so mana fixing is usually pretty fine in that standard, so... I don't know, I'm not sure how it is that Wilderness Reclamation doesn't have the same problem, but maybe it will maybe it will going forward. But in any case, I'm happy to see fires go away. Being able to slam, like Sweeper plus like Planeswalker on turn 5 is definitely not fun. Or, just being able to like go Granted and then find like any card out of the sideboard that's just going to like utterly destroy your opponent. That's not something I'm super thrilled about happening in one turn, so sure, fires, I'm happy to see it go. Alright, so the next one. And this I think is the more interesting part here. Recently, we've seen a rise in archetypes that use either Luca or Winota to put Agent of Treachery directly in play. While part of the design intent of these cards was to provide creative ways to deploy powerful, high mana cost creatures, we've observed that using them to play an early Agent of Treachery can be uniquely frustrating and difficult to come back from. So, they mentioned that, the whole point of Luca and Winota are to, put really high powerful or high mana cost things in play. So they're designed to cheat on mana. But that's exactly what Fires is doing. The whole point of Fires is to cheat on mana to put really big stupid things in play. So why is it that it's okay when they do it, but it's not okay when Fires does it? Luca and Winota are both like cards that very, very likely should be banned in these formats as well. But for some reason, they get to cheat on mana and put ridiculous things in play, and Fires doesn't. And in many circumstances, like these cards can be even more broken than Fires. Like there's just way too many ways that you can ramp them out and then just overrun your opponent, like by putting like 15 mana cost worth of stuff into play on turn 3 or 4. That's insane. There's no reason that should be okay. Now, Agent of Treachery is certainly a big part of that, but it's not the only problem, and it's not like they're not going to print more things that are going to be a problem with these cards either. I was playing like some best of one, in standard and historic just to get like daily gold from it the last couple days, and I gotta be honest, like at least somewhere between like 33 to 50% of the decks I'm playing were just like Winota decks, because apparently this card is so ridiculously busted. Like you go and you curve stuff like Arboreal Grazer or Gilded Goose into like Legion War Boss into Winota, and then attack and then put like 15 mana worth of stuff into play. Like there is no deck that's gonna beat that. The Winota is just a terrible design. It doesn't have to attack itself. The things it puts into play are all given indestructible, and it does it for each attacking creature instead of just once. So what the hell were they thinking? Oh yeah, and it digs 6 cards deep. This thing is like a show and tell on crack. It's absolutely ridiculous. And it's not like Luca's much better, because like Luca is just one of those cards where it's like, okay, well I guess I'm gonna use it, and now I have like an Endraze runner in play, and you're just dead. So, which I don't know, like maybe that seems like a problem. Like because Planeswalker's ability should not just be use like one of the first 2 abilities and win the game on the spot. That's the whole point of a Planeswalker. Is you're supposed to have incremental abilities on the first 2, and then a minus effect that does the basically I win the game thing. Where the problem is, Luca's ability is you put it into play, you use its you use one of its ability, like I think it's second one. What exactly is it here? Can we see? I think it's the second one, right? You use its -2, all right, and then you just pretty much win the game on the spot. Like, there should not be 5 mana I win the game on the spot cards, and there definitely should not be 4 mana I win the game on the spot cards either. That's insane. Agent of Treachery, I have no love for this card, and I'm fine seeing it banned, but I think this is just a symptom of the problem, whereas like these two are the actual problem. But you know what? Actually, no. Let's look at these. Does anybody want to take a guess why it is that they banned Agent of Treachery and not these two? I mean, maybe this is a conspiracy theory, but let's look at this. Ikoria Mythic. Ooh, I don't know. Ikoria Mythic. Huh. What about Agent of Treachery? I wonder. Let's take a look at this. M20 Rare. What's the set that just came out that, they're really worried about hurting the sales on? And that they're also, like, babying with because of the whole companion debacle? Oh yeah, Ikoria. So how bad would it look for them if they had to not only ban a bunch of the companions and then change the rule for them and then ban 2 of the mythics from that set? Yeah, what a fucking mystery it is that they've chosen to ignore the actual problem and just go after the symptom of it. Shocking. And it's exactly the same story in Historic. Like, again, I'm not sad to see Fires or Agent of Treachery go, but really, I think these 2 cards are definitely a huge problem that should go. Winota especially, like, I think part of the problem with Winota is they reprinted Mox Diamond into Standard, except it's a Mox Diamond that can also attack. Arboreal Grazer is a 0/3 Mox Diamond, and it doesn't have Defender, so I don't know why this 0/3 creature that they put doesn't have Defender. No, they made it specifically so they can ramp into Winota and attack with it. That's ridiculous. It's total nonsense. Because then you go like turn 1, Arboreal Grazer, turn 2 Legion War Boss, and turn 3 Winota, and just like win the game. That's insane. There's no reason that's acceptable. So, complete and utter bullshit. This is a definite half measure for banning in here. They should have gone for the head with these, but no, we're not going to see that because, we have to worry about Ikoria selling packs, and I'm sorry, like, I don't think that it's a mystery at this point that Wizards of the Coast values what they perceive to be their financial bottom line over, that integrity of the game. We already saw that when, they were cheating with the MPL and telling them in advance what what format it is they were going to play at the open on Arena, but you know what? And then instead of apologizing and be like, what, maybe we shouldn't have done that. No, then they go and blackmail the person that exposed the fact that they were cheating at the highest levels of the game. Yeah, that's real fucking nice. I mean, it's not that's a little bit of a side thing from this, but I think everybody's pretty much in agreement that they should not be going after this player and they should not be blackmailing him with his ability to play the game. So, once again, we see Wizards of the Coast, they are doing the half measure that lets them, not have to ban cards from the set that they just released, even though that it's very, very, very obviously, the cards from the set they just released that are the problem. Just another data point in a long, long history of them doing this sort of nonsense. Don't ban the expensive cards that are going to get us money. Ban the ones that are going to rotate, or the ones that are further back and not in the set. Just that's all it is. You can't ban face cards from a set, even if they're really stupidly broken. Welcome to Magic the Gathering. This is just about how it's going to be implemented in here. So, all right, let's talk about Companion. The other gigantic mistake that was Ikoria made here. While Magic rules changes aren't normally a part of the banned and restricted list updates, in this case we're introducing a change to the companion mechanic that is motivated by game balance and meta game share across all play environments. Effective with this update, the companion mechanic and all cards featuring it will now work differently from before. The new version of the mechanic will work as follows. Once per game, anytime you can cast a sorcery, you can pay 3 generic mana to put your companion from your hand from your sideboard into your hand. It's a special action, not an activated ability, so it's kind of like Morph. It happens immediately and can't be responded to. It can't be countered or stopped by cards like Phyrexian or Invoker. So basically, Companion is an ability that functions like Morph it does. And they figured that if they just make it cost an extra 3 mana, that's going to balance it. So, alright, let's read their justification for this, and then we'll talk about how we think it's going to affect things. Our reason for making this change is based on metagame data and play rates of the companion decks across all formats, and on player feedback on repetitive gameplay patterns. Yeah. Let's stop right there. It's not based on player feedback. It's based on the actual hard data. So it's not like people were just whinging and complaining about nonsense. No, we were talking about metagame shares varying from like the 60 to 80% range for companions, just dominating like literally every format. It's not that people were just whining about it, that it was we actually know this for a fact that they were dominating everything. So let's be clear. There is no debate over that. As a group, decks using companions have too high of win rates in metagame share in Standard, Pioneer, and Modern, and already necessitated bans in Legacy and Vintage. This trend represents a long-term problem for the health and diversity of all formats. You're goddamn right it does. Rather than go down the path of making several individual adjustments to the ban list for each format, we feel the better solution is to reduce the advantage gained from using a companion across the board. Well, I sincerely hope that that this change is going to be strong enough, because if it is not, I still think that you probably are going to have to ban some of more of these cards at some point, but well, let's continue. The result is we intend to reduce the metagame share of companion decks while still capturing the spirit of the mechanics design and still having companions being worth building around in many cases. We expect that the new version of companion mechanic will result in deck building challenge and means of self-expression that some players can opt into rather than being a huge part of the competitive metagame. Alright, full stop. There already is a format for that. It's called fucking Commander. You don't have to turn Modern and Legacy and Pioneer and Standard into Commander just because there's like some people that like Commander. Not every format needs to be Pauper just because some people like Pauper, right? Like, what? So what would it, like, imagine that? Okay, so, now all of a sudden, Modern, there's like, that you could have like Pauper Modern. Like, if you design your deck with all commons, you get to start with like a 10-card hand. Like, No. Let's not turn formats into other formats just because there are people who enjoy other formats. Have you also thought about the fact that, like, maybe some people like Commander for being Commander, and those same people might also like things like Modern for being Modern? We do not need to have companions to, exist in these other formats to turn them into something else. Like, they're fine the way they are. Let's not change, like, how, or the identity of each one of these formats. The whole fucking point of Commander is that it's supposed to be different from everything else, and that's the format that's supposed to be the casual, fun, I want to express myself format. Other formats are supposed to be, I want to be the more spiky formats, and I'm going to build decks that have regular deck building constraints to them. Not, I want to play my Commander deck in Modern. I don't accept that for a second. Like, so if that's your goal here, then your goal is flawed from the beginning, because Modern does not need to be companion or to be Commander, and this is the same thing. Commander does not need to be Modern. So let's just keep them the way they are. I think that the whole idea of Commander, it also only really works because it's not a competitive format, and if you try to turn Companion into, like, if you turn like Companion Modern into a competitive format, like we just saw, people will find ways to break it. Like, the only reason that Commander doesn't have these sort of same problems is because it's more of a social thing. There's not like high stakes tournaments for it where people are specifically going out of their way to try to break it. You know what happens when they do that? If at like a local game store, then people just stop playing with that person because they're not getting an experience that they're enjoying. But you know what? The problem, like, if Commander was like an F&M format, that wouldn't exist. And then you'd have to like be a lot more heavy-handed with Commander than like the same way you kind of have to be right now with every other format. And I don't think people want that. I think that people like the idea that you can have Commander be like a flavorful format that's fun and social without needing to worry about power level as much. If you try to turn every other constructed format into that, it's not going to work because they're inherently more competitive formats where things are going to break when you print like busted commander companions, basically. So it's not a goal that you should even attempt to work towards in the first place. Like, that is a fundamental problem one of the many fundamental problems with this mechanic, and you should not be trying to preserve that. You should be trying to get rid of that. That's one of the huge glaring issues with it that I think a lot of people have. So, okay, I digress. Let's continue. We've discussed several alternative rule changes, but ultimately settled on this one as it mitigates the potential for a repetitive gameplay and provides a wider window of interaction. By charging additional mana, playing a companion becomes less effective relative to playing the other cards the player has drawn. In this way, players are more likely to cast their other spells before their companion, resulting in more divergent game paths. Next, this additional mana will also slow the companion down by a turn, allowing the opponent to interact with it while in the companion player's hand, or otherwise giving the opponent an additional turn to plan ahead before the companion hits the battlefield. Yes and no. So the biggest problem with this is that you have failed to account for Yorion. Yorion's style of gameplay is literally already what you just described, where they're going to play every other card from their hand first and then play Yorion, because that's how you get the best value out of it. You want to put all the things like Oath of Kaya or Omen of the Sea or, Spreading Seas or any of those cards. You want them in play already, so then when you play Yorion, there's more things in play for it to blink and get value out of. Making them pay an extra 3 mana to put it in their hand before they do that, it only sort of slows it down. It doesn't really affect the Yorion decks very much, especially, I don't think that it's going to be that big a deal. It's not really going to stop people from playing Yorion in Legacy for that reason. The games are going to function more or less identically. That I don't think that if you think this is going to change the way the companions are played, I think that you are very likely to fail in that assumption. The companions are very often already a last resort. If anybody's playing Gigantha in their deck, they're not playing it at the beginning of the fucking game. They're playing it on the last turns when they have run out of other cards to play. That's the whole point. It's a free card, and a lot of them are they exist to be free, and that you only play them as a last resort. But then it just means okay, well, I have an emergency plan and you don't, so my free 5/5 is now going to dominate the game when everything else has been traded off. And things like Yorion in particular, the whole style of gameplay is meant to do that, is for it to be one of the last things that you play before you just utterly crush your opponent. You run each other out of resources, then you play Yorion, and then blink a bunch of stuff, get a huge amount of value, and just put yourself so far ahead of your opponent that there's no way they're going to catch back up, and the game is effectively over at that point. So, no, the gameplay is not going to change just because you made them pay an extra 3 mana. So, alright. Now, maybe with Lurrus, they might have succeeded by slowing it down by a turn or two. That's definitely possible. In order to play Lurrus and avoid a discard spell, you have to have 6 mana at least. And I think a lot of the Lurrus decks they're not going to end up with 6 mana usually, because the whole point of Lurrus's restriction is you want to cut down on the amount of lands because you're only playing 1 and 2 drops in your deck. Now, maybe some of them might curve a little bit higher because of instants and sorceries, but it's probably not likely that a deck like Burn, for instance, is going to get, they're not going to have enough mana in Modern to play to put Lurrus into their hand and then play it in the same turn. So discard spells will probably hit Lurrus for the most part, and if the game goes long enough where they do have more than 6 or more mana, you know what? At that point, the game is it needs to end anyway, so that's fine. I guess I'm just concerned I don't know. Look, Lurrus still probably is a good enough card that even doing that, again, kind of like Urion, it creates so much advantage when it hits play that it might not be enough. Like, you've enabled Thoughtseize to take it now, but like even that might not be enough, so who knows. Because you also have to remember there's stuff like Kolaghan's Command, where even if they like Thoughtseize it out of your hand, like the Jund decks are already playing Kolaghan's Command or like Unearth to get it out of the graveyard. So it's like, yeah, your Thoughtseize can take it, but like that's not going to stop it from dominating the game, like in a lot of cases. And yeah, like if it ever sticks for more than like a turn or two, they've already gotten like the investment of 3 mana into putting it into their hand back at that point. Because Lurrus is just gonna like take over the game if it lives. That's all there is to it. So Gyruda, this is probably gonna nerf in Legacy because now instead of mulliganing to 2 Lion's Eye Diamonds, now you need to have an extra 3 mana just to put it in your hand, and then you have to have 6. So yeah, they're not getting to 9 mana on like turn 1 or 2. That's just not happening. So Gyruda and Reanimator in Legacy is probably dead. I don't know, something like Gigantha and Delver, it's probably not really worth it anymore. Like, yeah, like it makes it a lot slower. I don't know. There's some of them where they might still play them for being free, but like I think the biggest problem is still probably Urion, and then maybe Lurrus. Like those are the two that even after this change is made, they very well may still just be worth it. Yeah, I don't know, like I don't know, maybe Gigantha is maybe it's still worth playing in the sideboard for certain decks. Like again, you're still playing it at a point in the game where if you have access to 5 mana, so you're just saying like, okay, well now you have to like basically take 2 turns to get it. So you know, on the turn you have 4 mana and nothing left to do with it. You pay 3, put it in your hand, and then the next turn, then when you still have no cards in hand, then you just play it. So yeah, all right. I don't know if this is gonna change things the way that they want to, but it certainly will slow them down. It's just a matter of they had really better hope that like companions are still not, you know, dominating everything, because this doesn't feel like it's necessarily addressing some of the core fundamental problems with it. Like it's still an 8th card that you're starting with, and you still have ones, like I said, Urion and Lurrus, where the second that they enter play, like they're going to start like dominating the game. The game becomes entirely about them, and it's more or less irrelevant what's going on around them. They just represent an amount of advantage that like is almost impossible to overcome if you don't have a way to answer it immediately. So this seems like I don't know, I feel like one of those 2 cards is probably going to see a ban at some point in another format. Probably Urion and Legacy would be my guess, because like it's just the one that can like most easily ignore like the 3 mana requirement for it, because like the Urion deck already wants to curve up that high in mana anyway, so it's not really that big a deal for them to just like, you know, play like a 2-drop and then pay 3 mana to put it in their hand. And yeah, I just that one in particular seems like that's the most likely one to be the problem, but at least everything else will slow down by a little bit. I don't know if that's going to be enough to stop them, because again, they're still like an 8th card, so they can still run you out of resources. It just means that it's going to take another turn to do it. So maybe in some formats it'll be fine, but like I think it's still kind of dubious as to whether it's going to be good enough or not. And the other thing to consider is like the Drannith Magistrate that they printed to try to interact that way. Well, now it does absolutely nothing to companions, because now they're getting cast from your hand. So yeah, so if you were running that card in order to try to interact with the companions to stop them from taking over a game, well, it's tough to yeah, just yeah, it's tough shit. Like Drannith Magistrate is useless against companions at this point, so throw that away. Like that's not going to do anything for these anymore. They're gonna have to find some other tool. I don't know, maybe something like yeah, I can't even think of like what you would want to do. Like I would say like something like Hushbringer could stop like Urion, but like it's probably not going to, and like it would do nothing against Lurrus. So yeah, no, I think that it's just gonna be harder. So I don't know, maybe it just means that like when they put the card into their hands, like it's got to be a matter of you have like a 1-turn window to like do something or to prepare for it with like a counter spell or a discard spell or something before it happens. And if you I don't know if that's going to be enough, but I guess we're going to find out. So yeah, it's rare that we use a rules change to address the metagame balance, and this isn't something that we have planned to do in the future. In this case, the issue wasn't with one individual card, but rather the companions as a group. We believe this solution is preferable to potentially needing to make multiple bans across different formats over time. I still kind of think that that's going to happen regardless, but I don't know. I think maybe the correct thing to do was just say that Companion is a draft-only mechanic the same way that Conspiracy is. This really feels like this is a half measure as well. It's maybe a little bit more than a half measure, but it just seems like if they ever print more Companions, like, they're still walking this line of, like, they had better overcost them by a lot because, like, it is still going to be very easy to break them, I think. There's just a lot of ways it can go wrong, so I don't know. I guess this is probably a little bit better than going to like 6 card. Actually, I don't even know if that's true. Like, going to 6 cards and having to start the game with the Companion in your hand still might have been better because it gives you more turns to like use discard spells, and you really don't want to start the game with like a 5-drop in your hand every game. So it probably would have fixed it for everything except Luris, and even Luris, like, it would have gave you more time to do something about it. So yeah, in this case, it's still an 8th card that it's going to get value, and like the window of time to interact with it is going to be pretty small. So like, I don't think that this was enough. This was definitely something that like most people, I don't think anybody predicted that they were going to like turn it into a morph effect, but yeah, this came out of kind of left field for this rule. I personally don't think that this is going to work out as well as they think it's going to. Like, I still think things like Urion like are going to have the exact same problems, and that this is going to be nothing more than a minor speed bump to those decks, but I guess we're going to find out. So, and yeah, I guess we're also going to see if Winota and Luca continue to, you know, be the ridiculously broken cards that we know them to be. So yeah, I'm convinced that those 2 cards probably needed to be banned, and it's going to be interesting to see how things go forward with that. So let's see here. So here we should pay attention. So the Magic Online ban and effective list. So today they are going to implement the bans in Magic Online today. However, the Companion rule doesn't get changed until the 4th for both online and arena, and the bans don't take place in arena until the 4th. So I'm probably going to not play Historic until Thursday, because I don't want to play Historic until this is implemented. But so then today I think I'll try some Pioneer. Yeah, like Pioneer seems like that's probably something that we can reasonably do. It's not going to be affected by any of the things that changed today, but I don't know. We'll get like that seems to be the format that's going to be like least changed by this rules change, because I like, it's still probably worth it for our mono blue Devotion deck in Pioneer to still play Urion, and I'll have to talk about that more when I do the league for it. But yeah, that's all I've got for now. So this one's not quite as long as everything else, but yeah, I don't know. This is kind of disappointing, and it definitely, it's better than nothing. But again, I still think it's a half measure kind of across the board that has a very significant chance of backfiring. So you would have thought that they would want to not take a risk with something with a half measure on this, but I don't know. I guess this is just the world we live in. Like, Wizards just does not want to ban this mechanic because they're really, really relying on it and like the other mythics from Ikoria to try to like fix their booster pack sales. I'm sorry, but that's just, I believe 100% that's the reason that we see things the way they are right now. So if you have a better theory as to why it is that they're, you know, treating this set with such, you know, with the kid gloves the way they are, I would love to hear it. So please let me know in the comments what you feel about this. I will see you guys later today, like I said, with this special announcement, and also we will still have some gameplay later today. So until then, take it easy, everybody, and see you then.
Yeah, that was good rock talk.